Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast, and we have been streaking the last 3 days. I wonder if there's correlation between me going back to the old intro of making sure everyone knows I'm on the West Coast and you're on the East Coast, because the last 3 days have seen some nice profit. We went 7-3, we went 6-2, 6-2. So feeling really good about the way we end this week here on Friday. Nate got best bets in this one, also got play of props in the other video as well. So make sure you are following along. Continue to subscribe to that page if you are not yet, and check out these videos we have for you each and every weekday this season. Also head to thelines.com and use everything that we have up on the site right now. Hopefully your bracket is still intact, but we have plenty of college hoop stuff on there and NBA as well, including that props finder tool that we tell you about to make sure that you're getting the best odds available to you. You can use that right under the NBA tab there and see all the odds available to you from these books this season that they're giving us here. Nate, let's go ahead and jump right into your first best bet of the night here for Friday.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get in the muck a little bit here and go Memphis at San Antonio. I like Spurs money line and the over. 216.5 is the total now. I think you can also put half your unit on just the over here, which would obviously not get you the same odds. We were talking about plus 160 here for the Spurs to win and the over. The total's bet down 3 points now because Desmond Bane is ruled out. But, I mean, we saw Bane basically do nothing against the Warriors, get pulled with the injury and whatnot. And Santi, Gigi Jackson, Triple J combined for 90 points on 57% shooting. I think this Memphis team is still going to be able to score. I think the Spurs defense, while Wemby is fantastic, there's not a great all-around defense here. That they've been going under at home because they've been playing against really good defenses and just haven't really been home otherwise since January. Their offense is going to be a little bit better. Devin Vassell has some good numbers against Memphis. And I mean, Memphis's defense, like let's look at that first and foremost. That's why we're backing the Spurs to win. Memphis has a 123 defensive rating their last 9 road games. 8 of those have gone over. The exception is when they only scored 93 at OKC, gave up 124. They're 60% of the over on the season on the road or as road dogs. So this is not like a small 3-game sample with Bane back where they were scoring 113. This is what the Grizz are all season, which is they play a little faster on the road and their defense is just way worse. They know they're not playing for anything this year. And the Spurs, I mean, they, as far as them winning, 10-4 against the spread since the All-Star break, they've covered in the one where they were favorites. But they're still allowing nearly 117 a game, the second highest field goal percentage, limiting threes in terms of attempts and makes. But like, I don't know how much of this is like regret is negative regression in terms of guys just missing shots. We'll see with the Grizz. I mean, they've been shooting pretty well from deep with those 3 guys I mentioned, all capable of lighting it up. Like Santi Aldama to continue his hot stretch. And then here's the key stat here. I mean, these teams are allowing they're number 1 and number 2 in terms of allowing points off turnovers. And they're also number 1 and number 6 in terms of turning the ball over. So there should be some gross, like chop possessions where it's just going the other way for an easy bucket, speeding up the pace. This is Memphis' 7th game in 12 days. So I don't really expect much defense. I expect them to let go of the rope like we've seen recently, because again, they're not playing for anything, sitting out Bane. That was their one little boost when they played OKC and they had Bane back and they're like, all right, we're going to be competitive here. But like, otherwise it's just about like, get your numbers, punch the clock, and let's go home.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I guess we'll see how much the Spurs are still sort of auditioning guys for next season. Memphis doesn't really have to do that because they kind of know who's going to be there. And maybe they're figuring out like, okay, well, Gigi Jackson's going to be inserted into our rotation at some point, or, Santi Aldama was going to be our 8th man or whatever. But they've got their lineup just on the bench at this point for next season with a couple guys that they have in there too. And so they're not really worried necessarily about like, running guys into the ground or what have you. I think the only guy on the floor that they'll be worried about in any capacity is that's on the Spurs side for Wemby. And to be honest, Wemby is a really good defensive presence. So the over is actually a little bit better at times without Wemby, as we've seen when he doesn't play entirely. So it's either way. My point is there aren't really these scary factors that could come in and sort of harm the over, which has gotten bet down a little bit, but I think there's some ill-advised public perception there helping that out. So I'm going to go to another one that has actually dropped in the favor of my bet, even though you would say that the CLV would have been bad if I took it last night, which is an over in that Philly and Lakers game. And I mean, honestly, I think this thing is at like 230. So when I took it at over 227.5, I was like, all right, there's not that much room for that margin for error here. Not as big of a gap as I'd like between the projection and the line. But now we get it at 224.5. And I do think it's going to start to get bet back up a little bit at this point, because if you look at the Lakers numbers, and I look at them at home, they are a team that has been a little bit different at home and on the road over the last couple seasons too. And they have had a propensity to play defense at home this season, but that was before the All-Star break. And things have been a little bit different for them at home since the All-Star break, where they have the second best offensive rating and the fifth worst defensive rating. And that's with the third toughest strength of schedule. And this really is since the month of February, because there was a few games before the All-Star break as well. So it wasn't like contingent on the break. Just since February started, that's been the case for them. They've been 10th in pace when they play there. And that's in the last 10 games in general, by the way, not just at home. The offensive rating and the strength of schedule, the defensive rating, all that stuff, they've been doing that wherever they play. 10th in pace wherever they play over their last 10, and number one in effective field goal percentage on offense. They've been taking some really good shots. They've gotten a lot more open threes, is what we've seen from guys like D'Lo and even Austin Reeves, who's come around from the 3-point line. And they're going to continue to get to the free throw line. Like this Philly team has no interior presence, and so they are fouling a ton with the fourth worst opponent free throw attempt rate over their last 10. While the Lakers, as we know, they are going to be at least in the top 5 in terms of offensive free throw attempt rating. They also don't really give up free throws, but Philly's not exactly getting to the free throw line itself, so it's not that big a deal. The stuff at home for them, they've gone over 9 of their last 10. They're averaging 241 totals when they play in LA, and that's been against some other teams that are a little bit offensively challenged as well. Maybe not as much as Philly, who is really it's tough to watch. They had a nice outing recently against Miami, but that still was a very, very low scoring game. When you look at Philly in their last 5, it's going to come down to above the break stuff. Like the Lakers don't really defend the pick and roll. They don't defend the ball handler on the pick and roll. They're one of those teams like the Bucks, like the Pacers, that are they're not really doubling on these pick and rolls. They're oftentimes playing that drop defense with AD and whoever is the big man defender. We've seen them drop down a bunch, which leaves that guy above the break way open. And obviously Tyrese Maxey, coming off a 6-point dud in his last game, is probably going to be looking to score against a team that he has a really good matchup against, even though he had a good matchup last time as well and couldn't pull through. But this is going to be one of those situations against the Lakers where I think that they're pretty happy to have this thing go up and down, play some transition ball as well with LeBron, knowing that if there is no set offense, there's nobody that can run with him one-on-one on this team. There's no athlete that comes close to his size. Obviously, that's unfair to say to almost anybody that's ever played the game, but especially true here for Philly, who's going to be, I guess, relying on a bit of Kelly Oubre and Tobias Harris to slow down the Kang. And I just don't see that happening at all.
Well, yeah, and there's really nobody to stop AD down low, though. I mean, Philly's just been so vulnerable down there, and the Lakers have been so vulnerable against playmakers like Maxey. So I'm glad you took this one, because like I can't, because I took the Sixers Suns over, and Maxey had maybe the worst game of his last 2 seasons.
Probably.
Without Embiid, just complete dud. I fully expect him to bounce back. And I mean, if he did anything in that last game, I mean, it only went under by like 2 or 3 points. So yeah, the Lakers are playing far worse defense. I mean, they're just a really bottom 10 defense when they don't have it like fully dialed in. So yeah, let's go with that one there. So OKC at Toronto, really hard to pick a game here with the -15 spread. I'm going to go Raptors under 107.5 team total. Originally was thinking OKC to go over their team total, but I mean, I just cannot. You have to fade this Toronto offense. Like we talk about it every time. They're actively trying to lose. They are resting everybody. Their starting lineup now on a 9-game losing streak is Kelly Olynyk, Agbaji, Bruce Brown, Grady Dick, Gary Trent. Gary Trent has a 19.5 point prop. Like, he does nothing but stand in the corner and shoot corner threes. And like OKC is not giving that up. First of all, Agbaji was he the leading scorer last time where he got 13 points? Like
he may have been. Yeah, he was close to it.
I think Trent might have had a few more.
Yeah.
But under in 4 straight games for the Raptors since their like Super Bowl effort at Denver, where they thought they might steal a win and then call it a season. They were scoring 98 points per game with shooting 31% from 3 in those 4 games. No RJ Barrett has been an automatic kind of under for this number. Their last 5 at home, even with RJ and quickly playing in some of those, 101 points per game, 32% from deep, 15 turnovers per game. And OKC is the number 1 team forcing turnovers. So, I mean, with OKC, it's usually like when they get a bad team, when they're double-digit favorites, they have at times just completely handled business, crushed teams. Usually it's with their offense, but they are 6-3 to the under. Their last 9 as favorites. Their last 5 with the rest advantage, they've allowed at a most 110 points per game. So they've held teams under this total 3 times, including right out of the All-Star break. They held both Washington and the Clippers under this total. And they are on a bit of a extended rest here. I mean, they had 3 days off before facing Utah, held Utah under this total in a relatively easy game. And now they get Toronto, which, by the way, this is the front end of a back-to-back for Toronto, at Washington tomorrow. So if it starts to go south, which a -15 spread would indicate it's going to, I mean, they probably pull the plug even sooner and just say, like, maybe we can at least be competitive against Washington. Again, I don't know if they want to win any games and lose their draft pick, but if they are looking to win, it's going to be tomorrow, not tonight.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good assumption. I can see the Thunder maybe trying a little bit less. I just think that'll impact their offense more than necessarily their defense. Like their weakest down low, right? Chet's been a good off-ball defender, getting blocks here and there, coming off of his guy more so than playing his guy straight up, as he's actually gotten bullied a good amount. I'm not worried about Kelly Olynyk taking advantage of that. I don't think you are either, is why you took the under 107.5. But I don't have that much fear of Kelly O taking over in this one in any way, shape, or form. So there's just going to be, even if you put the second unit for this Thunder team on the floor, wouldn't you take them against that Raptors squad who's going to win their starters? I mean, Andrew Wiggins, Jalen Williams with a Y, and Kason Wallace. I would take all those guys over pretty much everybody on the Raptors at this point. God bless Bruce Brown, but he needs somebody to unlock him, like Tyrese Halliburton or Nikola Jokic. They seem to be working out, and yet he's not on either of those teams anymore for some reason. But we move on because I concur with that one, and I'll close it out with a Dubs pick here. I'm going to take their money line and parlay it with Jonathan Kuminga to get 18 plus points. He's risen up to about a 20.5 point prop. And he's going to be a popular pick because of the fact that he is a power forward playing against this Pacers squad, who give up the most points per game to power forwards on the season. In terms of where he's shooting from on the floor, scoring from on the floor, they're going to be giving their bottom 10 defense as well, right? In terms of the down low, down low, they're basically the worst defense. They have played more Olay defense to the rim than anybody. And Miles Turner, who's been known as a shot blocker, has just been essentially not run off the floor, but by his own team run off the floor because of the way that they play. Centers are on this squad are usually standing outside the 3-point line, like where he is. They don't have enough time to run baseline to baseline. So my main point there is there isn't going to always be that much defense down low to defend against Kuminga. Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard and Nesmith. So unfair to have them on the same team. But Aaron Nesmith is somebody who's just not. I don't really believe in him. I guess, for lack of a better way to say it, I do understand his sort of inside out prowess on offense that can be helpful. On defense has not been anything. He and Obi Toppin have not defended their position at all season long. They're like I said, they're giving up the most attempts down low. They're giving up the second most makes down low, which is equating to a bottom 10 field goal percentage when you get inside 5 feet for this team. And also in transition, you can get stuff against them if teams actually want to run with them, which the Dubs probably will while they're at home. We've seen these games go way over for the Dubs as of late. That's why this total keeps getting bet up. And I don't really have the chutzpah to take an under in any way, shape, or form in this game. So I'm just taking the guy for the Warriors who's going to be attacking the basket the most on offense. And the thing about JK that scares me from just taking the over 20.5, and I do want a few points fewer, is that TJD, Trace Jackson Davis, is getting some minutes. I'll talk about him in player props a bit more, but he's getting some of those minutes because he's playing so well on the second unit with Chris Paul. We just saw him steal Kuminga's minutes in this last game, where Kuminga had 16 points going into the fourth quarter, and then they didn't basically play him at all because they played TJD for the majority of that quarter. He got over on his props. Kuminga missed out on the rebounds in that one and only got the 16 points. But the 18 points that I'm combining him with in this one to get plus 106 on DraftKings, that number is pretty good when you look at his play the last 10 games. Still got 18 plus at least in 8 of the last 10 that he's suited up. And like I was saying in transition, that should be there for this Dubs team, like I said, who's playing a little bit faster at home, scoring a bit more at home. And he's going to be the guy alongside Steph who's in transition the most. And as far as fast break points go, a little bit different from transition. That's where he's also excelling more than anybody else on this team, especially when other guys aren't quite in as much. Gary Payton hasn't been getting quite as much minutes since he came back. He would be a dude who would actually threaten Kuminga's stats, because Gary Payton Jr. at 6 foot, Gary Payton Jr. at 6'2" is basically a power forward as well. But he's not going to be coming in nearly as much as we've seen as of late. So I think this is a good spot for the Dubs to keep it going. I am scared of their ability to slow down the transition for this Pacers team, who is going to be in transition, maybe the third, fourth most in the league. We know that on the season, and the Dubs have had some trouble getting back. But with all their guys in there and a lack of without a lack of depth that they've had at times, I do think that they'll be a little bit more formidable in that sense.
Yeah, I'm not that worried about Jackson Davis taking minutes, because I think Draymond is legit questionable, or at least this is not like a big Draymond spot for him to play more than like 25 minutes, I think, because after this, Warriors go Minnesota, Miami, and Orlando in 4 nights. So three Draymond specials, right? Where it's just like, we are going to get physical. We're going to grind out road wins. I think this is a night for the young guys, right? If you're going back and forth with the Pacers, who just have not been like as explosive or as good of a team, honestly. I mean, more so because Halliburton's slumping than blaming this on Siakam, but it's just the fit hasn't been fantastic, and that's why we're fading them on the road. But there's no way we're going to continue with this trend of taking their road unders, even though hit that 2 nights ago. That was the Pistons. This is the Warriors. Warriors are fully capable of hanging a big number and probably getting the win.
Yep, and offensive rebounds for both those dudes too, JK and TJD, and even Day and Draymond. Like, who's ever in there playing that 4/5-ish for them, the offensive rebounds have been working for them, and the defensive glass has been a struggle for this Pacers team as well. So that is all the time we have for you in Best Bets, though. Continue to follow along. Check out the player props video that we have up for you as well. I believe a couple of 4-0s that we've been hitting with these player props. So feeling like we've got our bread and butter under our belt here, we're going to keep it moving. So check that one out. And until we do see you next, happy betting.